When I first went to jail in 2002 awaiting trial, we could buy these plastic AM/FM radios, and they were a godsend because they meant we could be connected to the world. We could listen to local radio stations, we could listen to local music, but there's no way to get any kind of tape or CD or MP3. Then, after I pleaded guilty and I was sentenced and I was sent to prison, I was able to buy a cassette player. And this was 2004. January of 2004, I got to the first prison, and I remember being excited because I could choose my own music. But the issue was, you didn't have a lot of selection in where you could buy tapes from because there were only 2 catalogs that I know of that were still selling cassette tapes. About 6 months, maybe 9 months later, they stopped selling cassette players and started selling CD players, and then you could order CDs. And there were still a lot of vendors in the early 2000s you could order CDs from. And back then, cassettes and CDs were covered by the publication policy, which basically covered anything written, anything recorded, anything you could listen to or read. And the publication policy was really weird. It banned the book Ulysses by James Joyce, which I don't think anybody would ever say was problematic, because they said it was pornographic. So sometimes I would order a tape or a CD, and I'd get a notice from Property saying, this is banned, this is against our publication policy. Now, in 2015, about 10 or 15 years later, they started selling MP3s. They started installing these kiosks in the pod. You could buy a player, and you could download music. It was $1.99 a song, it was like $13 or $14 an album, but you could preview it. Because with those tapes and the CDs, you never knew what you were getting. Because most of the time we were housed in prisons, it didn't have good access to radio stations. You were just like, oh, that thing that just came out that somebody told me is good. Like, you don't know what it sounds like, you don't know what it is. But when we could preview it, we could know, oh, I like this, or I like this artist, or I like this style. It allowed us to really expand what we could do. But what it also did was limit, because they started putting more and more restrictions or limitations on the music we could get, and that was all done through one vendor. Since you couldn't buy CDs or tapes anymore, it all went through JPay, so they would just tell JPay, we don't want this music or this artist or this song or this whatever, and it was no longer available anywhere in the state.